A heavy, stifling heat hung over the Canfield Green Apartments in Ferguson, Missouri, on the afternoon of August 9, 2014. It was a typical Saturday, until the silence of the suburban neighborhood was shattered by the sharp, rhythmic crack of gunfire. Within minutes, an 18-year-old named Michael Brown lay motionless on the asphalt of Canfield Drive, his blood staining the pavement under the unforgiving summer sun. What started as a brief encounter between a police officer and a teenager would soon ignite a firestorm that reached every corner of the nation, exposing deep-seated wounds of racial tension and systemic injustice. This was not just a shooting. It was the spark that would set the world ablaze and change the landscape of American policing forever. Before we delve deeper into the events that shook Ferguson and the world, please take a quick moment to comment, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of the Calendar of Crime. Your support helps us continue to bring these important stories to light, documenting the moments that defined our history and the cases that still resonate today. Now, let us return to that fateful afternoon in Missouri and the chain of events that followed. The day began quietly for Michael Brown, a recent high school graduate who was just days away from starting vocational school. He was walking down the middle of Canfield Drive with a friend, Dorian Johnson, when they were spotted by Officer Darren Wilson. Wilson, who was responding to an unrelated call, initially told the two young men to get onto the sidewalk. What happened next remains one of the most contested sequences of events in modern American history. According to Wilson's later testimony, he realized Brown matched the description of a suspect in a strong-arm robbery that had occurred at a nearby convenience store just minutes earlier. Wilson backed his SUV up, blocking the path of the two teenagers, and a physical struggle ensued through the open window of the patrol car. During this brief but violent struggle, Wilson's service weapon was discharged twice inside the vehicle. One bullet grazed Brown's hand, leaving DNA evidence on the door and the officer's uniform. Frightened and wounded, Brown took off running with Wilson in pursuit on foot. A few dozen feet away, Brown stopped and turned back toward the officer. Witnesses would later offer conflicting accounts of what happened in those final, desperate seconds. Some claimed Brown had his hands up in a gesture of surrender, while others, including Wilson, stated that Brown was charging toward the officer in a threatening manner. In the end, the result was final and tragic. Wilson fired several more rounds, striking Brown a total of 6 times. The final shot, delivered to the top of Brown's head, ended his life instantly. For 4 long hours, Michael Brown's body remained in the street, uncovered and exposed to the elements and the growing crowd of horrified neighbors. This delay in removing the body became a central point of anger for the community, who felt it was a sign of disrespect and dehumanization. As word spread through social media and local news, the atmosphere in Ferguson shifted from shock to palpable rage. By the time the sun began to set, the quiet apartment complex had become the epicenter of a burgeoning movement. People gathered, not just to mourn, but to demand answers for why an unarmed teenager had been killed in broad daylight. The following night, a candlelight vigil for Brown quickly escalated into a full-scale confrontation. A local quick-trip convenience store was looted and set on fire, marking the beginning of what would become weeks of unrest. The response from local law enforcement was immediate and aggressive, featuring armored vehicles, tear gas, and officers in tactical gear that many likened to an invading army. Images of police snipers perched atop Bearcat vehicles, aiming at unarmed protesters with their hands raised, flooded the internet. The phrase "hands up, don't shoot" became a rallying cry, echoing through the streets of Ferguson, and soon the streets of major cities across the globe. As the protests grew, so did the national spotlight. Attorney General Eric Holder and even President Barack Obama addressed the situation, calling for calm while acknowledging the underlying frustrations of the Black community. The Federal Bureau of Investigation launched a civil rights inquiry, and the Missouri National Guard was eventually deployed to restore order. Despite the presence of thousands of troops and police, the nightly clashes continued. Ferguson became a symbol of the militarization of police. a term used to describe the use of military-grade equipment and tactics against domestic civilian populations. The world watched in real time as a small suburb in the American Midwest looked more like a war zone than a neighborhood. Behind the scenes, a grand jury was convened to determine if Darren Wilson should face criminal charges for the shooting. For months, the community waited in a state of anxious limbo. The prosecutor, Robert McCulloch, took the unusual step of presenting all available evidence to the grand jury, rather than recommending specific charges. On the night of November 24, 2014, McCulloch announced the grand jury's decision. They would not indict Wilson on any counts. The announcement triggered an immediate and violent reaction in Ferguson. Buildings were torched, windows were smashed, and the sound of gunfire once again filled the air. The decision felt like a betrayal to those who had spent months marching for justice, reinforcing the belief that the legal system was fundamentally biased. In the wake of the grand jury decision, the U.S. Department of Justice released two significant reports in March 2015. The first report concluded that the evidence did not support federal civil rights charges against Darren Wilson, corroborating his claim that he acted in self-defense. However, the second report was a scathing indictment of the Ferguson Police Department and the city's municipal court system. It revealed a pattern of systemic racial bias, where police used excessive force and issued tickets primarily to generate revenue for the city, disproportionately targeting Black residents. The report described a toxic environment where the constitutional rights of citizens were routinely violated, providing a factual basis for the anger that had boiled over in the streets. The legacy of the Michael Brown shooting is profound and far-reaching. It served as a massive catalyst for the Black Lives Matter movement, which had formed a year earlier after the acquittal of George Zimmerman, but gained unprecedented momentum in the wake of Ferguson. The events forced a national conversation on police accountability, the use of body cameras, and the need for comprehensive judicial reform. While Darren Wilson resigned from the police force and moved into relative obscurity, the name Michael Brown became synonymous with a turning point in American history. It was a moment that demanded the nation look in the mirror and confront the reality of its racial divisions. Today, Ferguson remains a place of both memory and struggle. The site where Michael Brown fell is marked by a permanent memorial, a reminder of the life lost and the movement born from the tragedy. The reforms sparked by the DOJ report have led to changes in leadership and policy, but the underlying issues of economic inequality and racial tension persist. The calendar of crime remembers this day not just as a date of a shooting, but as the day a community stood up and said, "Enough." It serves as a stark reminder that the pursuit of justice is often long, painful, and fraught with complexity. But it is a journey that must be taken if we are to ever find true peace. Thanks for watching. Please comment, share, like and subscribe for future episodes from the Calendar of Crime.